Welcome back, Stupid Fast Nation. How are you guys doing today? Bringing you back for another sick build series. This is one of my crazy ideas I conjured up a long time ago. We're going to be taking a Banshee engine and shoving it in this tiny kid's Chinese quad. Something I've been wanting to do for a very long time is teach some of the power to weight ratio differences in racing and show you guys how to properly utilize a very lightweight chassis with a lot of power. Now, the Banshee engine we're going to be using today doesn't produce a whole lot of power. However, for our power to weight ratio testing, it will be perfectly suited for this application. Now, I know you may be looking at my Banshee wondering if that's what we're going to be testing it up against. However, I do have an entire second build lined up to go against this. And then at the end of the build series, we will be doing a test against my Banshee, which we will be fixing the override transmission. We will be doing some upgrades, porting, possibly methanol. So this thing should be a drag monster when we're done. If this is something you think you might enjoy watching, sit back, hit the notification bell, grab some popcorn, and enjoy. All right, guys, and here is our Banshee engine. Now, as you can see, this is not your typical Banshee engine, and you might be asking yourself, well, John, this has fins on the top. This is actually air-cooled, not liquid-cooled. So technically, yeah, it's not out of a Yamaha Banshee, but it is technically I think we would call that the predecessor of the Banshee. Basically, the Banshee didn't start out as a four-wheeler. It started out as a street bike back in the early 1970s. Yamaha produced the R5, the RD350, the RD400, as well as the RZ350, the RZ500. Those were the liquid-cooled bikes. The R5 and the RD bikes were the air-cooled bikes. The R5, that's what this motor is. I believe that was made from 1970 to 1972. It has a 5-speed transmission. And some of the things you're going to notice about this engine, it is identical to a Banshee motor in the fact that the cases are the same, the transmissions are swappable. Technically, I'm classifying this as a Banshee engine, although it didn't come out of a Banshee, but it basically is a Banshee. And it will produce the same power that a Banshee motor would with these same modifications. Before we go ahead and get started, I wanted to tell you guys I actually did try to blow this quad up for you guys. I got it for free off of a friend of mine, and I did a little horseplay with it in the yard, so go check that out right here. All right, so we just checked spark, and Numbnuts here thinks he can get this thing running. Oh my God, it does run, bro. Oh, dude, it's already doing burnouts. Oh, that carburetor needs to be cleaned. Dude, we got to blow this thing up. Get me the nitrous bottle. All right. Starter approved. Are you freaking kidding me? This thing's so much fun. That one definitely hurt. Take the phone. Ah, that hurt. I actually ate shit on that one. I gotta go check my back, bro. You were doing so good. I know. You were doing so good. Oh, bro. Here, check my back, would you? Is it bad? All right, guys, now that we got the dumb fun out of the way, let's go ahead and get started with the project. We're going to start by removing the plastics in the engine, and then we're going to go ahead, try to drop this engine in, cut anything we need to cut, try to align the sprocket. That's going to be the hardest piece of this, and then figure out how to make room for the kickstart. Okay, so now that we got the entire chassis stripped down, we can work on getting the engine placed into the frame. It looks pretty simple. Unfortunately, I am, after taking some quick measurements, going to have to cut the top of these fins off to clear the top of the frame because I really don't want to have to cut any of the structural integrity out of this frame. I'd prefer to leave it as it sits. And also, they do sell top end kits relatively cheap for these on eBay. And this happens to be a piston ported two-stroke, not a reed valve two-stroke. So also at some point it would be in my best interest to convert that to a reed valve for maximum horsepower. So we may also think about doing that at some point. But for this test, we'll just keep it piston ported for now. But anyways, let's go ahead and get started and getting this baby in. Alright guys, so as you can see, after a good bit of wrestling, we did manage to get the engine in. I had to cut out a couple supports of the frame and then also bang some of the back here with a hammer. I probably will be cutting a good bit of that out and re-structuralizing it with different tubing. And because I really want this thing to be strong and hold up, I don't want it to go out on the first test rip and hurt myself right off the bat, you know. I like to at least get a couple videos out of it. So I actually just ordered an HPI CDI ignition for this. That won't be in until early next week. In the second part to this video, that's when we will do the first start, first ride, stuff like that. But for now, we're going to get started on the engine mounts and the exhaust. Also, as you can probably tell, the gas tank is a little bit different. I happen to have a spare fuel tank sitting around, and I picked this one because it sits nice and flat, and it should be able to be hidden underneath the plastics yet, and I don't have to go and custom fab a whole nother tank. It should hold about a quarter gallon, which will be fine for what we're doing. You know, we could actually probably get about 30 minutes ride time out of that, depending on how powerful this thing actually is when we're done. All right, guys, so we're starting the process of mounting the engine, and it's actually extremely difficult to get the sprocket aligned from the engine back to the rear end. I'll show a couple clips here of the engine mounts. Yeah, they look a little janky, but for the purpose of this process, they will work. The left side mounts I'm going to all weld hard mounted, and the right side mounts I'm going to make boltable, so that way in case we have to take the engine out, rebuild it, reseal it, we want to add more horsepower, change it out to a liquid cooled Banshee motor, who knows down the road if this thing does all right. But yeah, all in all, I've got a rear sprocket ordered for this thing, and I'm going to be looking into a different set of wheel and tire options. And like I mentioned earlier, I may also stretch this out because I have a feeling that this is going to be a wheelie monster. And I really want to be able to control the power on this. So definitely something to consider, as well as suspension. We may be upgrading this to a little bit better of an ATV style shock suited for just a little bit more weight. So we're going to finish up these mounts here, and that'll be pretty much it for this part. Now I went ahead and took the liberty of making a cardboard mount to be able to transition that into a steel mount like this. Alright guys, so as you can see, we did manage to get the engine into the frame. Like I said earlier, the left side is fully welded, the right side is bolted, so that way we can remove the engine, which we will be doing to go over some of the gaskets. This engine does have good compression, so I don't think we'll do a full teardown, but I can already see that the clutch cover is missing a bunch of bolts, and I definitely want to inspect that and go through the transmission. So I'm not sure if I'm going to disassemble the transmission, but I for sure will at least check the gears and make sure we run through that. Also, I have an HPI CDI on the way for this. I'm going to ditch the old school point system. That will also give us a better ignition curve, which is also adjustable and will help us gain some ponies. We're going to be doing a drag exhaust in the next video. We will also be spraying down the entire frame, mounting the fuel tank, getting the carbs jetted properly, and a few other things. I was able to find a rear sprocket that had the same exact bolt pattern but was in a 420 chain on Amazon, so that way we could run a 420 chain and sprockets on this and change our sizes. I did go ahead and run a power to weight calculation on this setup already. I got my scale over here to the right. I weighed the frame empty. It was about 110 pounds, and then I weighed the engine, which was about 89 to 90 pounds. So all in all, this should be about 200 pounds all said and done. It should make in the neighborhood of 50 horsepower pretty easily. I'm going to speculate that based off of Banshee engines and their porting. This was the earlier piston port design motor, so this may make anywhere in the neighborhood of 45 to who knows 60 horse. But I will let you guys know how the ass dyno feels when we take this thing for a ride in the next video. So power to weight ratio is you take the horsepower divided by the weight of the vehicle. In this case, it would be 200 pounds total, roughly. We might be off by a couple pounds, and we might even be able to lighten this up a little bit. If we use a base horsepower figure of 45 horsepower, divide that by 200 pounds of the total rolling mass, we come up with a figure of 0.225 ratio. And just to put that into perspective for you guys, my drag Banshee sitting in the background there, we have already managed to make 100 horsepower to the tire on a car dyno, which I actually think it will make more than that on an ATV dyno. Not going to talk about that in this video, but if we take that 100 horse, my Banshee weighs about 320 to 350 pounds. That gives us a base figure of 0.307 roughly. And so it's a little bit higher than this, but we could do a little bit of work up this horsepower. Like if it winds up being 60 horsepower, this thing should dominate the Banshee. So just to put that into perspective for you guys, how valuable power to weight ratio is. I built this quad for next to nothing. The motor cost me 200 bucks off of Facebook Marketplace. I got the rolling chassis for free, and it's literally just my time at this point. The HPI CDI was 250 bucks. So when all said and done, we'll be like less than 500 bucks into this thing and have something that can dominate, you know, my $10,000 plus drag Banshee over there. So this is kind of the lesson I'm trying to teach throughout this small series of videos. And I'm also super stoked to give you guys the next build. I'm actually so excited to do the next one. It's never been done before. And actually, I don't think this has been done before either. I don't think anybody's put a Banshee motor into a kid's Chinese ATV. Let's be honest. I searched all over the internet and could not find anything. So as hilarious as this is, I also want to teach the power to weight ratio differences for you guys as well. I think one other thing I forgot to talk about was the sprocket alignment. I know I'm probably going to be getting questions as to how we got the sprocket aligned. I'm going to be really honest with you guys. I actually did it by eye. I have a pretty good eye for this kind of stuff. But to be honest with you, the correct way to do it would be to get laser alignment tool from like Amazon. I think they sell those for like 50 bucks with a magnet on the back. You can stick it to anything, and then that would be a nice straight edge for you to be able to line that sucker right up. But I have confidence in this, and honestly, if it doesn't hold, which I know it will for at least a little bit, but if it breaks after that, like I can always go back and remodify things to make them work properly. And it might give me some encouragement to put an actual liquid-cooled Banshee motor in here that creates a good bit more horsepower, which would be hilarious to rip this thing around. Think about that. A mini kid's ATV stretched out with drag wheels and sand paddles and stuff on it that makes like 100 horsepower. But anyways, get out of my head for a second. Let's get back to the build. All right, guys, so in the next video, we will be doing the first fire up, hopefully getting a first ride on this thing. If you enjoyed the content, you already know what to do. See you in the next one. Peace.